What was the reason that Darth Sidious was frustrated with Darth Vader's lightsaber style? Greetings, Acolytes, and welcome back to the archives. For years, Palpatine had watched Anakin grow in the Jedi Order, gaining power and skill in the arts. By the time of the Clone Wars, he had become a nearly unstoppable machine. His refinement over Jem So had reached near perfection, to the point where he was able to use his anger to destroy an aged Dooku, the finest duelist in the galaxy at that time. He would continue to use his skill in tandem with the dark side to utterly crush all Jedi that came during Order 66, even downing the venerated Battlemaster Sin Drallig in single combat during Operation Nightfall. But after he had entered his suit and officially became Lord Vader, Emperor Palpatine found himself increasingly more irritated with how his apprentice approached combat. Finally, once Vader managed to get himself a lightsaber, the Sith Master challenged his new apprentice to a duel, one that would take place on Coruscant, to give him a proper introduction into Sith combat. So, join us today as we open another holocron and talk about how Sidious personally changed the way that Vader fought with the lightsaber, and the first lesson of the blade. This comes from a short story in the canon Star Wars comics several months after the Jedi Purge. Sidious and Vader stand atop a walkway in Coruscant in the Works District. The two are completely alone, black silhouettes standing in the smoggy evening light. They are away from the prying eyes of a new galaxy, in a place where they can unashamedly be themselves and unleash their power. Palpatine ignites his bejeweled lightsaber with a grin and speaks two unexpected words: "Fight me." Without hesitation, Vader ignites his own weapon, though it is not yet the one we are familiar with. This is the lightsaber hilt of Karak Fala, a powerful Jedi slain by Vader in the weeks prior. Sidious begins the duel with his sudden spinning air assault, and Vader responds appropriately and stops his advance with a counterattack, locking blades with his new master. Palpatine proves how fast he is by easily weaving around one of Vader's strikes, before nearly decapitating his own apprentice with a counter move of his own. Then, with a swift upper stroke, Sidious smacks Vader's lightsaber out of his hand. Catching his apprentice's weapon, Palpatine then ends the duel with a hard force push, throwing Vader to the ground. It's at this moment that Palpatine sneers and tells Vader that he fights like a Jedi does. These are his words: "You fight as if this were your only weapon, but it is not. The Sith's weapon is not the lightsaber. It is the dark side of the Force, and the dark side touches everything." With those two final words, Sidious simply lifts his hands, tearing the metal out of the very walkway that they stood upon, flinging the debris at his apprentice. Vader gets chin-clipped with a sheet of scrap before getting barraged with a storm of metal and piping. All the while, Sidious administers his lesson. The saber is merely a symbol, a flame signifying the great blaze of the dark side, the inferno that consumes all who come against it. All. Finally, the storm ceases as Vader is left on his knees. But Vader says to his master that he understands, and summons his own lightsaber again. Here, we see Palpatine teaching Vader many things, 3 lessons to be exact. The first lesson is to break Vader from fighting like a Jedi does. It seems strange for us to say that Palpatine had to teach him such a thing, considering that Vader fights far more aggressively than any Jedi would. It was this aggression and the use of the dark side with Jem So that allowed Vader to quickly conquer many Jedi. However, it wasn't Vader's lightsaber skill that concerned Palpatine, but his over-reliance on the lightsaber and the weapon itself. This story is juxtaposed with a flashback of Obi-Wan dueling and teaching a young Anakin the importance of a Jedi's weapon, the lightsaber. How it reminds those who they fight for that while a Jedi has the capacity to do more harm, they very purposefully do not. For the Jedi, it is a symbol of restraint, which is why they mostly use just their lightsaber to disarm or defeat their foes. It's also why they try to exclusively use the lightsaber and only use the Force against an enemy if it's necessary. For the Jedi, they want to avoid using the Force to harm another individual, since that is the antithesis of what the dark side is. Sidious is here to break Vader from that, to refute it even. He must shatter the mind that fights fairly, and allowing your opponent to face you on even ground. Instead, Palpatine comes to his second lesson: fighting like a Sith Lord. He says the power of the dark side touches everything, which is why it should be the main weapon for a Dark Lord. At that moment, Sidious does something very familiar to us, barraging Vader with debris. This is familiar primarily because it is a classic move that we've seen used by Darth Vader time and time again. In Legends continuity, Vader finishes off a Jedi Master on Kashyyyk with this very same move, and he of course uses it against Luke on Bespin. In both of these cases, Vader is fighting like a true Sith Lord. The Sith are all about proving their superiority through domination. What better way to prove your own strength than to utterly dismantle your opponent with an insane barrage of force power? It not only destroys them physically, but crushes their morale and their very will to fight. In the old days of the Sith, many Sith refused to fight those who they saw as being beneath them. In fact, oftentimes Sith Lords considered it as an insult to themselves if they had to actually use their lightsaber against a lesser enemy. While Jedi fight fairly and issue formal challenges, the Sith desire to prove their supremacy. This is perfectly captured by the creator of the Rule of Two in Darth Bane. In Bane's day, the master of the Sith Academy of Korriban, Lord Cordis, could see that Bane was far more powerful than the current Dark Lord, Lord Khan. He went to him in secret, kneeling before him and swearing fealty and support to Lord Bane and taking over as leader of the Brotherhood of Darkness. But Bane didn't want to lead the Brotherhood, he wanted to destroy it. He could see that Cordis was still diluted like the rest of the Sith were, and this is what the novel reads in Path of Destruction. "I can prove quite useful to you, Lord Bane," Cordis insisted. "Many of the Brotherhood are former students of my academy. They still look to me for wisdom and guidance." And therein lies the problem. Bane lashed out with the dark side, seizing Cordis in an immobilizing, crushing grip. His opponent tried to protect himself, throwing up a field to deflect the incoming assault. But Bane's attack tore through this pitiful defense, wiping it away as if it had never been there. There was a strangled cry of pain from Cordis as the force tightened around him and lifted him up from the ground. "Your wisdom has destroyed our order," Bane explained casually, watching as Cordis struggled helplessly above him. "You have polluted the minds of your followers. You and Khan have led them down the path of ruin." I don't understand," Cordis gasped, barely able to breathe, as the breath was squeezed inexorably from his lungs. "That has always been the problem," Bane replied. "The Brotherhood must be purged. The Sith must be destroyed and rebuilt, and all the others must be wiped from the face of the galaxy. This is why I have returned. You, Khan, all of it." Dawning horror spread across Cordis's long, drawn features. "Please," he groaned. "Not like this. Release me. Let me draw my lightsaber. Let us fight, like Sith." Bane tilted his head to the side. "Surely you know I could kill you just as easily with my lightsaber as I could with the Force." "I know." Cordis's skin was turning red, and his body was trembling as the pressure mounted. Each word he spoke took tremendous effort, yet somehow the dying man found the strength to make his final plea. "More honor in death by combat." Bane gave an indifferent shrug. "Honor is for the living. Dead is dead." A final push with his mind tightened the invisible vice. Cordis let out a final scream, but with no air in his lungs, it came out only as a rattling gasp. A gasp that was lost beneath the snapping and crackling of his bones. Bane understands the principle of fighting with the dark side, leaving little to chance, dominating his opponent, saying that the Sith had diluted themselves into thinking that it was the Sith way to fight and die with honor like a warrior. This was the lesson that Palpatine was trying to teach Vader. And the third lesson is far more subtle. The way we see Palpatine disarm Vader, dominating him at the lightsaber before conquering him with the Force as well. He stands over him with a sick grin. While on the surface, this is a lesson on how to fight like a Sith. Nothing like this is ever face value for Sidious though. The message to Vader was clear. This was Palpatine's way of sending a clear message. Vader could never defeat him in a fight. Not at this point. He indeed learned this lesson about fighting with the Force as Sidious had taught him, but he also understood the underlying threat in Palpatine's superiority. A promise that he could beat him with the Force and with the blade without hesitation, without mercy. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on Palpatine teaching Vader the values of a Sith Lord? And what are your thoughts on this great lesson that he imparted upon his apprentice and his lightsaber style? As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the archives today, and may the Force be with you.